Well, the LBK wasn't a surprise, or for any beekeeper, in fact, it wasn't a surprise to see the report, because it just has been an appalling year for bees. So we knew, for the first time, I've been a beekeeper for 7 years, and the first time I got absolutely no honey whatsoever, when I usually get sort of 40 pounds a hive. So we've all known that it was going to be pretty disastrous, but frankly weren't expecting it to be quite this dramatic. I mean, 72% drop across the nation, and oddly, a 78% drop just in London. So we have fared the worst, which is a slight surprise, because of course we're not known to be the wettest area in the country. If not, we're slightly warmer. So yes, it was a big surprise that the drop was that dramatic.
So why do you think London fared the worst then?
Well, it's a question of sort of hot debate at the moment, because when it's that dramatic, and given that we have so many beekeepers, you have to wonder if there are other factors in play, and we think that there may be two other factors that have contributed to this. One is that they may not have enough to eat, and the other is that because there's been this sudden influx of beekeepers, it's doubled in the last 4 years, we're worried that some beekeepers just do not have the skills, the level of competence to recognise when their bees might be in trouble, or that they might need feeding, or that how to sort of manage them properly. So we think that those could be two other factors, but the beekeeping world is a fuzzy kind of place where there's lots of grey areas and shades, so it's difficult to tell. But that's not an opinion just of ourselves. It's something that the BBKA suspect, and certain academics who are trying to get a clearer picture of what's really going on in London.
Okay. That might come as quite surprising news then, to hear that the number of beekeepers has increased so dramatically. I mean, quite a few people I think would assume it was maybe not as
well. It's been interesting, this, because it's a sort of a bit of a myth. And the good thing is that we've got people that are interested in bees, so that's the starting point. People are interested and they want to know about pollinating insects. And in fact, there was a Friends of the Earth survey that came out just last week, which said that whilst it pointed out that 9 out of 10 people can't recognise a honeybee alongside other insects, it also said that about 60% planned on planting pollinator-friendly plants, and that about 57% wanted to know more. So the interest is there, but there is this myth that bee numbers are declining. That's true about bumblebees, which are very much more in danger than honeybees. But the facts show that actually we're getting more and more bees in London. The figures have gone from 1,617 colonies in 2008 to, I think, nearly 3,500 now, and the figures are likely to be higher, because only 75% of people register their hives at all. So we think we've probably got about 5,000 colonies in Greater London, and when you consider that there's 60,000 bees in each of those hives, we're talking millions of bees. So for the moment, we have got a lot of bees in London, and we don't want to stop people from keeping them, but the myth that bee numbers are declining in London is definitely not true.
Yeah, that certainly would come as a surprise to many listeners, who would assume that, like you say, bee numbers are declining, perhaps because they do confuse them with bumblebees. And so I think a lot of people's reaction to this report might be to go, oh, well, obviously it's been a bad year, it's always a bad year, but that's not the case.
No, it's not the case, but we have seen, last year, I think the average yield for London hives was more like I think it was about £25. But the worrying thing is that each colony needs £35 to just get itself through the winter. So when you're looking at this year, we've got a seventh of that. And when they don't have their natural food, you have to supplement it with sugar. And that's not good, because it means that they're more susceptible to disease, because they're not getting the range of nutrients that they need. And it would be the equivalent of you or I eating nothing but Big Macs between now and January. You'd be feeling pretty sick. So, it's a worry.
So personally, as a beekeeper, have you noticed this year then it being particularly difficult in your own beekeeping?
Yes. That's a complex question, because, my bees in particular, they will have suffered from the bad weather, but then, you know, there are other things that come into play. And alongside the bad weather, I've just had an unlucky year as a beekeeper because my bees didn't build up quickly enough in the spring. And then there have been other things like, you know, your queen goes out to mate, but she mates on the wing on a, you know, still summer's day. And if she doesn't come back properly mated, then she's not going to lay sufficient eggs and the population doesn't build up, blah, blah, blah. So, yes, I've had other things that are just from a husbandry point of view have made life difficult for me. But I'm not alone in that. I think a lot of people have had very weird years, but most of it relates back to the weather.
And do you think the general public will notice this as a knock-on effect in the products that they buy?
I don't know. I don't think. I mean, certainly they won't be able to buy any local honey. That's the obvious thing to say. I mean, normally we harvest our honey. I mean, I don't sell mine. I give mine away. But you know, supplies of local honey have already gone, and we harvested only two months ago, if that. And normally you'd have you know, stashes of honey that would take you right the way through. It normally runs out just before the harvest of next year. So, you know, we've got people screaming out for local honey and we just haven't got it. As for other things, I mean, I know that other people that are not related to bees are suffering as well. I know a baker who's said that wheat prices have gone up because the wheat crop's been so, you know, affected by the weather. So it's not just bees, it's nature in, you know, in general that have suffered. But I think that the campaign or the ideas that are spinning around at the moment will make people aware of the role of bees and that they need to be looked after. And I don't think that they'll find that, you know, suddenly they can't get, you know, apples in Sainsbury's because, you know, they might find local produce harder to find, but then of course big supermarkets will just import from elsewhere. But I would imagine it's you know, it's affected a lot of other people. I mean, I know that the British Honeybee Farming Association, their crops, I think they had a press release came out yesterday, and their honey yield has gone down by about 50%. And those are the people that do it on a big scale. You know, they'll have 700 hives or something.
What prospective solutions, if any, do you see for the problems then in London of this big drop?
Well, I think the weather is, you know, a big factor, but putting the weather aside, there is still a year-on-year drop. The solution is twofold. You know, I don't want to say it, but if there were fewer beekeepers around, that would ease the problem. I mean, and what we're saying is that whilst we don't really know what is going on with bees in London, that it's sensible to apply a foot to the brake pedal, just so that, you know, we can just check that you know, planting is going to keep pace with the growth of honeybees. I mean, for example, I mean, an analogy I use is that if you've got a cat and in a room with some cat food, then that's all well and good. But then if you put in another cat and another cat with the same amount of food, one or two of them are going to go hungry. And then if you pile in 10 cats and you've still got one bowl of food, you need to do one of two things: either stop putting cats into the room or go and get some more food. Luckily, cat food is readily available, but you can't just magic out of nowhere food for bees. It requires, you know, urban planning, councils to think more imaginatively, and you know, it's not just, as I say, it can't be magicked out of the air. So what we're trying to do is to work with councils who unfortunately are cash strapped. They want to plant more ambitiously, but so what we're trying to do is to divert private business resources to fund that. So I think business have got a role to play, councils have definitely got a role to play, and the general public have got a role to play. I mean, anybody, we're all beekeepers, whether we keep bees or not. So everybody's got a responsibility to improve the environment in which they live.
So a long-term solution then, rather than any quick fix?
Yeah, there isn't a quick fix. There is not a quick fix because there's no sign of the interest in bees abating in terms of people actually wanting to become beekeepers. Our membership is going up and up and up, and all other beekeeping associations around the country are having the same issues. So no, there is no quick fix. So that's why we're trying to sort of just slow it down a bit and have people that are thinking about getting bees maybe doing other things, because saving bees doesn't necessarily mean keeping bees.